Welcome to Device, ooh, the voice from above. Welcome to Device and Data Protection with Mobile Device Management in Office 365. The longest title I've seen so far. You will hear me call it MDM for Office 365 because it's much shorter to say and much easier to say. So my name is Astrid McLean. I'm a Senior Program Manager with the Information Protection team. So we look after all of the compliance features across Office 365. And in the presentation today, we're going to explain why we introduced the MDM for Office 365 feature, which is a new feature that we only just announced a few months ago and started rolling out about a month ago. So we'll take you through why we did it. We'll talk you through what the feature is. We'll have some demos about what it looks like from both the user point of view and from the admin point of view. And we're going to talk about the architecture, about how it works behind the scenes. And of course, we're going to talk about full Intune as well, because the feature wouldn't have come into existence without a very close collaboration between the Office 365 team, the Azure Active Directory team, the Office clients, and of course the Intune team. So today presenting with me is one of my partners in crime, Brian, who's from the Intune team.
Hi everybody, how you doing? So I'm Brian Keller. I've been on the Intune team for several years now. I started out at Microsoft working on Systems Management Server, 2003, so way back. And have basically been in the enterprise management space ever since with SCCM. But I'm really excited about Intune and all the capabilities we have in the cloud, and super excited about this integration that we've done between Office and Intune to bring mobile device management to Office customers. So just some statistics. When we talk about mobile productivity, what are some of the challenges that are being faced in the world today? So some statistics here. 50% of employers by 2017 will require employees to supply their own devices for work purposes. And I've actually put a little bit of a different slant on that. There is some bring your own device requirements coming into companies, but then you also have end users who are bringing in devices who just want to be productive on the device that they have already, the one that's their personal device. And it's going to wind up being a number of different platforms coming into the organization, whether it's iOS, Android, Windows technology. And so the point here is that you're going to have a lot of employees in a lot of different on a lot of different platforms. So, as I mentioned, another statistic: 90% of enterprises will have at least two, I think, mobile operating systems that they need to support. And that goes back to what I was saying just a moment ago, which is that you have a lot of different users with different preferences for devices, and those devices are being used to do work. And that's just the reality of the world that we're in today. Here's another interesting statistic. 93% of employees admit to violating information security policies. That sounds very malicious. They're violating security policies. But people aren't intending to be malicious or bad, unless, of course, you're Tom Brady and you're deflating footballs. So I was born and raised in Seattle, big Seattle Seahawks fan. Working at Microsoft in Redmond is a privilege in my backyard, and I'm still bitter about the Super Bowl. Just run the ball. Right? No. So all joking aside, people aren't really intending to do bad things, okay? What they're really trying to do is they're trying to do work on their device. They're trying to be productive. They're trying to get things done. They've got deadlines, and it's a lot easier for them to be able to do those if they can take documents with them, if they can get access to email from anywhere. I remember when I first joined Microsoft, I said I'd been in enterprise management for quite some time, but I did start out in SQL Server when I first joined the company. And it was SQL Server 2000 reporting services. It was a brand new reporting services infrastructure. We were building on top of SQL, part of the Business Intelligence Suite, I think it was called. And I had a deadline, and I was supposed to write some API docs for the extensibility SDK for reporting services. And I grabbed a bunch of specs off of a site and put them on a USB drive because I wanted to do some work when I got home. Took it home, plugged it in my personal computer, worked all night, brought it back to work. I didn't really think anything of it, that I had Microsoft confidential documents on a USB drive with no encryption and back at my house on a desktop computer. And I wasn't trying to do anything bad. I was actually trying to do something good. I was trying to meet deadlines. I was trying to get things done. Obviously, information technology and enterprise management has developed quite significantly since that time. Microsoft itself has implemented a number of our technologies, obviously, to enable mobile productivity, enable security, a lot of the things that you're trying to do as well in your environment. But the point is, people aren't trying to do bad things. There's going to be that one or two individuals with an agenda or some kind of political motive or something, but 99.9999% of your employees are just going to do things on accident while they're trying to be good and do good work. So 80% of employees admit to using non-approved software. Ooh, once again, one of these things. But they're not doing non-approved software because they're trying to be bad. There's a tool out there they need, or there's something that makes their job easier. They want to go get it. It's familiar to them. Maybe it's an email client that's their favorite, that has the user experience that they really love, and so they're trying to get that. Or there's some SaaS application that's really helping them be more productive and do their job, and you're just not familiar with it, and they want to use it, and you haven't vetted it for security, et cetera. These are the challenges that we're all faced with today, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that people are trying to do their best work and have a good time at their jobs. So when we talk about mobile productivity, what we're really at Microsoft, here's kind of how we frame it. You probably heard the cloud first, mobile first. And when we enable mobile productivity, we really look at it from three things. We look at it from the productivity tools themselves, right? Office. And I think Office, not being on that engineering team, but working closely with them, I think they've done a great job with the Office applications on iOS and Android. I know my wife has an iPad, and when that Office came out, she was so thrilled. She went and installed it right away. And it was beautiful to see like a Word document on her iPad, rendered correctly. And so it's really exciting to see those applications, those productivity tools come to all the platforms, not just Windows. And so we look at Office 365 as being very important to mobile productivity. Then we have identity and access. That's very important as well. And that's done through Azure Active Directory. And identity and access enables you to secure your backend resources, to authenticate people, to understand your users and what devices they're on. And you can do multi-factor authentication, and you can make sure and secure your environment and give users access to those resources you have. And then we look at bringing in Microsoft Intune into that picture, which provides the device management and the application management. And we want to do this in the cloud. The cloud is the future, and it's the strategic bet that Microsoft made a while back and that we're continuing to develop. And obviously the benefits of the cloud are it's always up to date. We can continuously get features pushed out, right? These aren't binaries that we have to deploy and build and give to you, and then you have to test and deploy in your environment. This is quick upgrades. It's infrastructure that's out there for you, always up to date. We have very rigorous engineering practices with regard to security and compliance. And these services are developed from the ground up. These microservices within Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Intune, and Office 365, they're designed to work together to provide kind of a singular experience. I was having a customer meeting this morning, and it was a company where they had really embraced the cloud, but they had a lot of on-premise infrastructure. And they told me the first workload from their organization that they moved to the cloud was their incident management, response, and help desk. And I was talking to them about that, and they said, well, the reason we moved that workload first is because if our network is down or there's some problem with our internal infrastructure, we can rely on the cloud, we can rely on Microsoft services to be up and running with redundancy and highly available. And so we'll be able to run our incidents, get access to documentation, knowledge bases, everything we need to be successful in this incident and resolving the incident without having a bet on the corporate network and the corporate infrastructure that we have in-house. I actually thought that was pretty fantastic. I hadn't really thought of it that way before. But to have a customer tell me that they were betting on Microsoft's infrastructure to be up and running and secure, that they could always rely on when their own network perhaps was having some issues. And so these are the things when we talk about cloud first, mobile first, and the rigorous work that we do to build out our cloud services, it's really being done for you and to help you be successful. Transition. So let's move into now managing devices, because O365 MDM is about mobile productivity and mobile device management. And traditionally, mobile device management was kind of done through email, through Exchange. And really being productive on a mobile device early on was about just getting access to your email. And what we're finding is, and Exchange ActiveSync is a great tool for that. You can do PIN, you can do some basic device settings, and it's been successful in a lot of companies for a long time. But the way things are shifting now, it's not just about email on those mobile devices anymore. It's about full productivity. It's about all of the Office apps that we've developed for the iOS and Android and on Windows. Being able to do Word documents and PowerPoints and store and share documents. Being able to view PDFs and media. So, and even for your own line of business apps. So we need a management solution that goes beyond just email, but that can secure the device in a number of scenarios, including working with documents, working with your own line of business, applications and data. And so that's really the reason why we've taken this next step to go beyond ActiveSync, which is traditionally an email type solution for managing devices, and expanding it out to full mobile device management within Office. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it back to Astrid, and she's going to talk to you about Office 365 MDM and walk through each of the various features and actually show you how to set it up and through a bunch of demos. So, Astrid.
Thank you. Okay, so mobile device management for Office 365. How many people saw the blog posts that we've done over the last few months that advertise this feature or talked about this feature? All right, so a few of you have seen it. How many people have tried it? No, we've got a few people. That's good. So we announced the MDM for Office 365 feature a few months ago. We started rolling it out about a month ago, and it's now available to all first release customers. And we're continuing our rollout to the rest of our Office 365 customers. And in terms of the uptake, we've had, just in the last week, over 500 people activate this feature to take a look at it. So there's clearly a lot of interest. One of the things that's quite unique about it is we take a little bit of a different approach to MDM than other people may do. The first thing is it's a very user-centric approach. When you apply policies for MDM to Office 365, you apply it to groups of users. What that means is if there is a policy that applies to Astrid, it means that no matter what device I use to connect to Office 365, all of those devices will need to go through conditional access, be enrolled in Intune in order to work. So it's not just about securing my iPad or securing my Windows Phone, it's about any of the devices that a particular user uses. And at the same time, by giving you the ability to apply this to groups of users, if some of your users in your organization, hey, they're not working with confidential information, I'm not worried about them accessing things, but maybe my sales force, or maybe my execs, or a special group of people that I either want different policies for, or they're the only ones I want policies for. So it is a very user-centric approach. The other thing to note is that all of the features are powered in the back end by Microsoft Intune. That doesn't mean you have to buy Microsoft Intune, but what that means is that when you turn on MDM for Office 365, we actually turn on Intune for you, or a version of it in the background. And then if you want to use more of the capabilities of Intune, you can then kind of move forward into a full Intune rollout. The starting point as well. So one of the things I was talking to two lovely gentlemen in the front row before we started, I asked them about the MDM solutions that them and their customers were using. And two things were very clear. There was one thing that said, hey, yeah, sure, my organisation's got a BYID policy. It's written down on paper. And that's it. We expect everyone to follow it. The second one was the organisation that said, as soon as I say MDM, there was a near riot in my users. Oh my, you're going to take over my devices, you're going to take over the world, what are you going to do to me? And so one of the things we've done to help alleviate both of those problems is trying to put automatic policies in place that prompt the user at the time they're accessing Office 365 data to go and then enroll their device in our MDM solution. So rather than pushing it out to everybody, you can actually have users almost self-select as they go and connect to Office 365. And that's what the first feature is all about, conditional access. So conditional access says that there are a group of conditions that you as an admin can set that say before a device can connect to Office 365, it, for example, needs a 4-digit PIN, it cannot be jailbroken, and it needs to be encrypted. Until those criteria are met, that device cannot connect to Exchange Online or to SharePoint Online. So that's the first piece of it, which is conditional access. The second one is device management. So we do push settings down to the device. So you can control settings on that device, things like, hey, I want to make sure I turn off screen capture, for example, because that has nothing to do with accessing Office 365, but it has to do with how data can leave the device once Office 365 data is there. So there's a group of settings that you can push down to help control the device. And then the last one is selective wipe. So Exchange Active Sync had a wonderful wipe policy. As soon as you said you wipe the device, you wipe everything. You wipe their email, you wipe their photos, you wipe their apps, you wipe everything off that device. So users are less than thrilled with that approach. Selective wipe allows you just to wipe the Office 365 data. And we'll show you a demo of that and what that looks like from a device point of view. But we also provide some reporting. So I will show you a very early look at the reporting. Almost finished it. We're this close. So I'll show you, have a look at how far our reporting's got to see what devices are connecting, when was the last time they synced, what types of data is connecting to, or what type of devices are connecting to Office 365. So that's all the stuff that's built into Office 365. Now, all of that, plus the application management, is also available in Intune. So when you go to full Intune, that's when you get into full application management. Then you can start to say things, I want to deploy applications onto the device. Or I want to have a certain set of applications that can copy and paste only to other managed applications. I can have an app that I say, I don't want you to save it to anything else but another managed application or to Office 365. Now, all of that full application management is part of our full Intune product. So you can do all of the things you can do in Office 365, plus more, but it's all built on the same foundation. So let's talk about what those three big areas are. So the first one's conditional access. So here's the way it works. You download an application, and it's the standard Office apps. So OneDrive, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and they go and connect to Office 365, and it gives them a prompt that says, hey, you need to enroll this iPad. They go through a number of enrollment steps. Once that device is enrolled in Intune, and it is fully compliant, only then can you have access. But it doesn't stop there. If anything changes on the device that changes the compliance status of that device, they find a way to jailbreak the device, you are no longer compliant, you lose access to the Office 365 data from that device. So it's a continual state of the device needs to be enrolled and it needs to be in a healthy state before you can connect. So I talked about some device settings. So you can set things like pin complexity, but you can also set things like, hey, you need to have encrypted backup. You're going to block screen capture, you can block Bluetooth. So we've got a number of settings that you can push down to the device that means that the device can't be used to spread data further than you'd like it to be spread. So when I go through the policies, I can show you what it is that we have in the UI. And we've tried to make this as easy as possible. So most Office 365 administrators are not looking for 6,000 options to try and set this. They're looking for something that's easy to use, and that's what we've tried to do with MDM for Office 365. And then the last one is selective wipe. So I have an employee, they're using Office 365, they're using OneDrive on their device, and they leave the company. What do? Admin can go into the Office 365 Admin Center. You have a list of devices. You select the devices that belong to that user, you hit selective wipe, suddenly all that Office 365 data is gone from their device. So anything that was important to your company is no longer accessible to that user anymore or to that user on any of their devices. So it's a very easy interface to be able to just take away the corporate data from their machine. Clearly I walked too far over. All right. The 4 steps to working on MDM for Office 365. First one is setup. So there are a few one-time setup steps you need to take. Actually, the Apple push notification thing is a once-a-year thing as well, but I'll explain that. So you set it up effectively once. Then you go into configuration. So you might need to set up some security groups, or you will already have them in your organisation. You can create some MDM policies and you apply those to the groups. That's great. You only have to do that occasionally. Then your users get to take control. Any users that are affected, they get to download using the latest apps. As soon as they go and connect, it'll ask them to enroll. And then from an ongoing management point of view, little admin can say, hey, I'm going to wipe devices when I need to, or I might do some reporting. So there's 4 things. Very easy to do, and what we're going to do is step through those 4 things and show you what they look like to show you how easy it is to set up MDM in an Office 365 environment. So we're going to start with setup. I'm going to cheat a little bit. All right, I'm going to do a single slide walkthrough rather than show it to you, and I'll show you why. So this is what happens when you see MDM in your Office 365 tenant. This is the Office 365 Admin Center, and you'll notice on the left-hand side there's a new tab called Mobile Devices. So the first time you come in, you'll see the screen that says you need to set up mobile device management for Office 365, and there's a Get Started button. So you hit that Get Started button, and it takes a little while, which is why I didn't do that part of the demo, kind of live, because that's kind of boring. But what we're doing in the background for you is we are setting up your Intune instance for you. We are setting up Azure Active Directory for you. We are populating both of those things, groups in your environment and any existing devices you have. The larger your tenant, the longer that's going to take. Now, for demo tenants or things without any data in them, that takes a few minutes. For larger tenants, like the MSIT tenant, which is quite large, it takes a few hours. Now, as that's happening, you can go away, you can do whatever you want to do. You don't have to stay on the screen. We'll just do stuff in the background. And when it's done, let's flip over to a live demo where I can show you a tenant I set up earlier. So here's my tenant. So it's gotten through that getting started. And here's your page that says, hey, here's your list of devices. Well, of course, you don't have any yet because none of the devices have enrolled. But the first thing you need to do is actually up here on the right-hand side. Let me zoom that up for you. You'll notice it says that the APNS certificate for iOS devices has a little warning symbol next to it. In order to push settings to an iOS device, you actually have to set up a certificate which has been issued by the Apple Push Notification Service. And so we give you a little wizard here to step through that process. And I'll show you how easy that is. So you click on Manage Settings, and I've got a Setup button next to APNS. That says, here we go, we've got a 3-step wizard. First thing you need to do is download a certificate signing request. So you download it. I'll show it in the folder. As you can see, I've done this more than once, so I have an Apple Cert request. So that's great. Office 365 has created that for your tenant. Easy enough. Click Next. All right, then you actually have to sign on to the Apple Push Notification portal. And I'll sign on with my, just remember her credentials while she's doing a demo. Did I save the password? Apparently not. Get to see my password. Oh, here we go. Right, so the Apple ID that you use, you really want this to be a corporate ID. The reason you want this to be a corporate ID is this is the ID that will be attached to the certificate which gets downloaded to all your devices. If you lose that ID, or you don't renew the certificate every year, then all your devices actually have to be re-enrolled because they forget how to talk to it. So it's kind of important that you use an Apple ID that you set up for your company, people know the password, or at least an admin knows the password somewhere. So all I do is I click on Create a Certificate, accept the terms and conditions, and it says, give me the file, and we created this Apple request in the last step. So I'm just going to select that, I upload it, it creates my certificate, I download the result, and I get an MDM Microsoft Corporation certificate, and that's it. I go back to my wizard, I click Next, it asks me to upload that file that I just created. It uploads it for me, it installs it, and hopefully it'll work. Little thinking box. There we go, the demo gods are with us, and now I have a big green tick. That's it. And all I have to do is set that up once, and then every year you'll notice that it tells me when the expiry date is. It'll expire a year from now. We'll put a warning up closer to the time, and Apple actually sends you an email as well to say, hey, your certificate's about to expire. And at that point, all you need to go is go back into the portal, renew the certificate, re-upload it, and you can keep going. So that's the setup. The only other thing that you need to do is you may need to set up your DNS domains. So you'll notice there's a little option there to configure domains for DNS. Typically, your devices do not need to go and find the Intune service. The app that iOS and Android downloads, that you'll see the company portal, knows how to find Intune. Windows devices, however, use DNS to go and find the Intune service. So if you have a custom domain in your Office 365 tenant, you will need to go through the DNS setup, which just asks you to set up 2 CNAME records, and so they can configure and point back to the Intune service. But we give you instructions on how to do that, and that's a one-time thing that's pretty easy to do. So that's it. That's the setup. You're done. Okie dokie. So that's the APNS setup. Maybe it'll go to the next screen. It's a very slow clicker. There we go. So, setup steps. So who thought that was hard? Awesome. You'll all be able to do it in your tenant in no time. Right. Next step. Configure the security policies. So for this, we show you how to set up security groups. You create your policies and you apply them. So let me just explain how these policies work, and then I'll do a live demo so we can actually see them. But when you create a policy, there are actually 3 steps that you go through. The first one is you set the criteria to say, these are the conditions that must be met on the device before it can connect to Office 365. And then you actually have an option down the bottom to say, I will either allow access and just report the violation, or I will actually block access. And so that allow access one is kind of like a test run. It requires the devices to enroll, but it won't block access if they're not compliant. So you might want to try it out. You can see the reports, you can see what happens just to see what happens in your environment, and then you can set up another policy that says, hey, I want to block access when you're ready to do that. So that's the first step. The second one, here we go. The second one says, what else do you want to configure? And these are the device settings that I spoke to you about. So these won't stop people accessing Office 365 as long as the first set of criteria are met, but it will push these policies down to each device. So you have things like block screen capture that I talk about. And then the very last one is I'm going to apply this to a group, and I'll show you how you can apply each of the policies to the group. And of course, this is available through the Office 365 Admin Center. It's also available through PowerShell if you really, really want to script it. But it's pretty easy to do, and it's not something that we expect people to have to do a lot of. So doing it through the UI is probably the way most people will do it. There are 2 sets of settings that you set for your entire tenant. So the first one says, what if I have a device that doesn't know how to deal with any of these policies? And so the first one is a list of, what do I do with the unsupported devices? Do I allow them to connect to Exchange or not? And you've got to block or allow depending on whether you've got old devices in your environment or not. The second one is a global exclusion list for conditional access. So say I either have, I don't know, a CIO that I always want to have connected, no matter what state their device is in. I can put them in an exclusion group. Similarly, if I have a group of people that are having terrible problems with their devices, they're traveling, they're trying to do the right thing, they have a problem with it, there's something going wrong, I can easily put them in the exclusion group for as long as I need to put them in there so they can get over that. So it's kind of your get out of jail free card, if you like. So it does provide you with an exclusion. We'll still push policies, but we won't stop them from connecting because it's an exclusion from the conditional access. Is there any compliance tracking associated with whether people are excluded or not? To be honest with you, I don't know that we track that particular one. You can always see who's in the group. And if they are violating the conditions, we do actually report that. We just don't necessarily correlate that they were violating it and they were excluded. So that's good feedback. All right, let's show you what these things look like. I jump to yet another tenant. 7. All right, it's like a cooking show. Here's a tenant I set up earlier. That actually has APNS set up and it has a few devices enrolled because it's nice to actually have something to look at. So same page. Oh, actually, just before I do that, I will go to groups first. So here are my list of groups in Office 365. All of my policies need to apply to security groups. The only thing they can't apply to is distribution groups. So when you're setting up groups of people that you want to have a policy applied, have to be security groups. You can either set them up through the Groups tab in Office 365 Admin Center, or you can go, if you manage your groups in Exchange, all of the security groups you create in Exchange will be synced to Office 365 and you can use those as well. So I set up my groups. But if I go to my Mobile Devices tab, there's this wonderful link up here called Manage Device Security Policies and Access Rules. So, I know weird things happen when I'm zoomed in, so I'll click on that. All right, takes me to a place called the Compliance Center. How many people have already seen the Compliance Center? All right, probably about half of you. For those that haven't seen it, this is a place where you set up all of your policies for Office 365 related to compliance. Everything from retention to archiving. It's also the place that you set up your device management policies. So same sort of area, but we just give you an easy way to navigate to it. So I'll create a policy, and we'll give it a name. All right, let's zoom in on that. All right, that's my first set of, this is my conditional access page that I talked about. So most of this is around setting passwords, complexity, the length of the password, whether we should lock devices, when the password expires, those sorts of things. You can require data encryption. The prevent jailbroken or rooted devices from connecting, we don't let you unselect that. Really? Do you want, jailbroken devices connecting to your environment? We don't think so. So we set that one on for you, but we put it in so you actually know it's there. The require managing email profile says required for selective wipe for iOS. So this is an ability on iOS that we can push an email profile down to the device. So this is automatic. It knows who the user is. It can set up an Exchange profile on the device. And it means when we do a selective wipe, because we own that profile, we can take it away. And then the last two options, I talked about those. You can either allow access or block it and just report the violation. I go to the next one, and there's the set of things that I can configure in order to, stop data leaving the devices. I can say things like you always need a password when you're connecting to the application store, or I can block cloud backup, those sorts of things. So they're my device settings. Somewhere I can get my next button. Yes? So MDM for Office 365 does not have the concept of managed apps. All right, that's a full Intune capability. So those device settings will apply to everything on the device. The conditional access settings, however, only apply to the applications that understand what conditional access is, which is the Office apps. Okay? So the last one is selecting groups. And when you're using this, I'll give you the big hint about how you use this. So we have a great group picker that actually doesn't tell you about any groups. So I select a group and it gives me a blank page. You need to search for groups. But the nice thing is I can put in a star and it shows me all my groups. So the background to that is for very, very large organisations that have tens of thousands of groups, that picker hangs and gives you a terrible experience. So we'll figure out eventually the right way to do that if people really want to see it, but you can just search for all of the groups you want and it's an efficient way to find it. So in this case, I'm just going to apply this particular policy to my marketing team. I say finish, and it'll go away. And you'll notice it says turning on. What it actually does, it goes from Office 365, it has to send it to Intune, it has to send it to Azure Active Directory. When it's all done, life is good, it'll say it's turned on. That's it. That's all you have to do. So it's easy to create policies. And then we have an option up here that says Manage Device Access Settings. And that's the one I told you about, where you can set the allow block access for Exchange Active Sync stuff, and you can also set your exclusion group there as well.
Can you tie those groups to Active Directory?
So those groups are actually security groups in Office 365, which are stored in Azure Active Directory. So they are actually Azure Active Directory groups. Okie dokie. Enough from me. Enrolling devices. I'm going to hand back to Brian to talk all about what the end user experience looks like.
All right.
Thanks, Astrid. I'm going to play the role of end user today. And so, hey, the picker works great. So, some things you're doing when you're enrolling a device as an end user, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to set up your device. And so you'll want to get the applications on the device that you're interested in using and with your company data. That could be the new Outlook for iOS, OneDrive, PowerPoint, Word, Excel. And you're going to want to start to do that by setting up your email as well. So get the device set up the way that you want as an end user. And then the next step, traditionally with MDMs, you have to maybe encourage your users to enroll or things of that nature. But in this case, the minute that I as an end user try to connect with my company in some way, whether it's connecting to the company to get email, whether it's connecting to SharePoint to get access to some documents, through the power of Office 365, Azure Active Directory, and Intune, I'm going to be prompted to enroll my device if the policy for me or the group that I'm in is set for conditional access. So to get access to backend resources, I have to be MDM enrolled. Once I go through the enrollment process, then it's pretty simple for me. I continue to access company resources. We do have the concept of regular compliance checks, where Intune will be working on the device, scanning the device, checking policies. If anything changes, like for example, you decide to change your password policy, or if somehow my device became jailbroken or rooted, or if I fell out of compliance with the corporate policy, then access will cease to the backend resources, and I'll be notified in a friendly way that something has gone wrong with my device. You need to go take care of it, and we'll actually tell the end users exactly what we found and how to go fix it. And I'll kind of walk through that a little bit. So, without further ado, let's get onto one of these devices. I've never been on stage with 4 iPads before. This is pretty exciting.
What number do you want?
8, yes. All right. So, let's see. There we go. So I don't have a pin, because pins are annoying, and I just want to get right onto my device. So there's no pin on it. And there's a couple ways, as I mentioned, that I would connect with my company. The first way would be to add an Exchange account to the native mail client. Another way would be perhaps through OneDrive, trying to get access to documents. Now, the benefit for me accessing the company first through OneDrive is that Astrid has been kind enough in her administrative console to set up an email profile for me. So if I were to enroll and access through OneDrive, when I'm done enrolling, that email policy will come down, and I won't have to configure the native mail on this device. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just attempt to connect through OneDrive. And I'll sign in. I'm going to warn you that I am not a proficient iOS user. My wife and kids, iPod touches and everything, they love it. They FaceTime all the time. I haven't quite got into it yet. So I'm a little bit not practiced on the keyboard, but we'll go through it, get through it. That's the one. Okay. Now it's going to recognize that I'm a member of this tenant, and it's going to ask me to authenticate, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Once again, Astrid warned me that my password was not iPod friendly or iOS friendly. I didn't listen, and it is difficult to get this plugged in, but we'll give it a try. Sign in. So, there's a lot of things happening here. The first thing is that the policy for the corporation is that I enroll my device to get access to SharePoint. And Azure Active Directory has recognized that. Intune has actually published a policy to Azure Active Directory. So the directory is aware of my identity and that it doesn't know what this device is, and so it's asking me to enroll. And Astrid's going to walk through some of the architecture, like how that actually works, the nuts and bolts, later. So I'll save some of that. But anyway, I'm being asked to enroll my device. So I'm going to go ahead and click enroll. And so what's happening now is that we have the capability to detect whether or not our company portal is installed or not. Now, the Microsoft Intune company portal is what we use to enroll iOS devices. It's also the way that you can see a list of enrolled devices as an end user. You can check compliance. If you have the full version of Intune, it's a place where you would go to get company applications that have been made available to you. So in the interest of time, since I'm sure all of you have at least installed an app from the App Store, I've decided to spare you the getting and installing and spinning wheel and all that stuff. So I'm going to just click Open, and it'll take me to the company portal that I already installed. If it wasn't installed, that banner would have said, go install the company portal. It would have taken me to the App Store and right to the company portal page, and I would have installed from there. So I'm going to go to Brian's iPad here, and it's going to say that the device is not enrolled. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. Now, interestingly enough, if this was the first time I had launched the company portal, it would have recognized that this was a first use experience, and it would have taken me right to this screen. So I would have been prompted immediately to enroll. I wouldn't have had to know to click my device and see that it wasn't enrolled and get it re-enrolled. So this would be the first launch experience of the company portal. So I'm going to click Enroll. How many folks have ever enrolled a device into Intune, or at least into some MDM through iOS? So quite a few. For those that haven't, I will do that. Oh, sign in. My session expired. So I'm going to be asked there. So I'll try again. Enroll. So we're doing a live enrollment. I shouldn't have made fun of Tom Brady. I should not. So here we go. Our director of program management, Michael Wallant, is from New England and was very excited, has posters all over the office. Every time I go in there for a one-on-one meeting, I get a little sick, but it's okay. So now, this is classic kind of iOS enrollment, right? So I need to install a management profile. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Click Install. It generates the keys. It's going to be downloading that, installing that. At some point, there will be a warning that's provided by Apple as I enroll. This is a scary warning that an MDM can't do anything about. This is basically Apple saying, are you sure you want this MDM to take over your life? Not much you can do about that. And do I want to trust for real? Yes, okay, please, just let's do it. There's another thing happening here as well, which it really enables these scenarios. This device is also being automatically workplace joined. So device registration is happening within Azure Active Directory. That way there's a record of the user, the device, and the compliance state for your directory. And that's how Intune and Office 365 and AAD work together. And it is the same reason that we can support the native mail client. We haven't talked a lot about that yet during this presentation, but the native mail client on iOS and Android supports this conditional access. And the way it does that is through ActiveSync. And ActiveSync, the protocol was updated to be aware of this concept of conditional access, and it actually queries Azure Active Directory, and as I mentioned, Astrid has a nice diagram to show you. So I'm all done. Going to complete the device add project. Oops. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I'll try one more time. Let me sign in. Oh, geez, not to sign in. Here we go. I should have changed that password, Astrid. I told you. You were right. Let's try this one more time. Oh. And once again, my crazy password. Well, I'll let that cook for just a second. And I'll switch back to presentation. Oh, device enrolled. Okay, well, yay. Pre-release code. Connecting to Oath5. Actually, it's almost ready for prime time. I will have to get the logs from this device and find out what happens. Of course, I've been playing with it, unenrolling, re-enrolling, unenrolling, re-enrolling, so I have some issues. So now this device there's no information, and this spinny thing you see, checking compliance, is the first time check-in with Intune. So Intune is bringing down all of the policies, the security policies, the PIN policies, and it says the device, this is the device I'm here to use, so it's done. So let's just go off of that. Okay, so just to let you know, iOS we can't control when the PIN code requirement comes up, so it can take some time depending on the user's activities, whether they're actively using an app and stuff. Because I switched out of the app, the iOS platform decided to take the opportunity to tell me that I now need a PIN code, thanks to Astrid and her security policies. So
I made it 6 digits too.
You what? Oh, 6 digits. Oh, man. Yeah. I'll do a super secure thing and use my birthday. 2/9/1975. I think, did you have an alphanumeric policy?
No.
Maybe not.
No, I'm not that mean.
No, you're not that mean to me. Thank you. All right, save. Come on. I just gave away my age. I'm 40, turned 40 this year. So I still feel young, maybe, kind of. All right, so a couple things. I'm going to go back to the mail here, and you're going to see that I'm going to be asked for a password because this is being set up for the first time. So once again, I'm actually getting pretty good at this crazy password. I'll get really good at it by the end of the day. Oops. So let's see, let's click OK on that. I'll bet you that'll be OK anyway. Let's go back. Make sure I got so I do have an inbox. Can't get the mail. Oh, here we go. I did finally get it. Okay, so this is actually by design. So one of the things is this is the first time I'm using this EAS or ActiveSync client. And so although I'm enrolled, it actually is going to ask me to walk through a couple final steps to get my email working. If I had come into this without having enrolled first through OneDrive, then I would have clicked that Enroll Your Device, and it would have taken me out to the company portal, and it would have been the exact same experience that you saw me go through with OneDrive. The reason that Exchange Server still thinks that I'm not enrolled is because we have to have an association between this EAS mail client and the device that I just registered in Azure Active Directory. So when Exchange asked Active Directory for, hey, do you know about this EAS mail client? It said, I'd never seen this before, even though the device is there. So that's why the last step here, so check to see if you're compliant. If I clicked that, it would have taken me back and done another compliance check and brought some policies down. But the one that I'm really interested in is this third one, which is Activate. So this doesn't require any prompting to the user. What's happening is I'm actually, by clicking that link, I'm sending the EAS ID to Azure Active Directory, and it's going to create an association between the AAD ID and the EAS mail client. And that gives us the flexibility. If they come in from any mail client, I'm not an Android user, but I know a lot of friends who say this Touchdown is great, right? So that's an EAS client, and you'd have the same experience there. So we can support any EAS client on any device, but the downside is we do have to ask the users to go through that final step of creating that association so that we can provide mail services after that.
If the device is enrolled, what's the experience if they accidentally click on number 1 there?
It will actually tell them that the device is already enrolled, so they'll know. So I think that's all I have for you there. The question is there a capability to lock the native mail client in order to use the new Outlook mail client? I don't know the mechanics behind locking the native mail client, but I can actually find out if you come up afterward. I'll get your information and I'll I'll send you the latest information. I know that we have a team that's been working on that, specifically that works on the conditional access piece. And so they're trying to provide some guidance, because obviously, in this case, it doesn't necessarily matter, but if you're using full Intune and you're doing full MAM and application management, you want to create kind of a secure environment. The native mail client, obviously since Microsoft, those native mail clients, you can't wrap, you can't integrate any of our SDKs, and so we can do conditional access through the power of EAS, but we can't secure the copy paste and things like that. So I think that's where you're going with the question. And yeah, containerization. So let's chat right after the presentation, and I'll get your info. Oh, got to switch back to 5. Thank you, ma'am. So that's the enrollment experience. Touchy. So just to recap the device enrollment prompts, depending on where you're coming from, if you're coming from native mail, you'll get that Exchange quarantine mail. That'll be the first mail that you get. After you enroll, the sync happens very quickly and your mail starts to flow. So that's one way that you enter into an enrollment experience. The second way is through the Azure AD enrollment, which is what we saw when I went with OneDrive. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Astrid, but if I come in with the new Outlook app, that's the Azure enrollment experience.
You'll just have to wait for my demo in a minute.
You're going to demo that.
I'm going to show it to you.
Okay. Great. So the iOS and Android enrollment experience is very similar. You go through the company portal and go through the enrollment that way. On Windows Phone 8.1, it's a little bit different. So you don't enroll through the company portal. You enroll through the native operating system. So you go to Workplace, and this is when the clicking becomes a problem. You go to Add Account, log in with your organization credentials, authenticate with Intune, and then you're immediately enrolled. And so we do all the certificate transfers and get everything set up, and the user doesn't really have to do much except sign in. So that's a benefit to the Windows Phone. So I kind of showed you what it looks like to be compliant and everything's happy and all the policies came down. But I mentioned that if your device does go out of compliance at some point, the user will be notified of the issue. They'll be directed to the company portal to find out more information, and then there's information on how to resolve that. And once you take care of that and hit the check compliance, you'll be up and running again quickly as an end user. So now I'm going to hand it back to Astrid, and she's going to talk about all the different supported Office applications and also go into some more details about the architecture and the services behind what you just saw. Thanks. Astrid.
Thank you, Brian.
Got it.
All right. So this is a list of the apps that trigger that conditional access enrollment process. So OneDrive for Business on iOS and Android, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. As soon as you connect to OneDrive for Business through any of those through those products, whether you're saving something or you're opening something, it'll trigger that enrollment process. Outlook, up until last week, all we could say was coming soon. Now I can actually show it to you. So this is coming by the end of this quarter, I believe. But, oops, I'm going to twist, do something odd. All right, I'm going to hold it here. Right, so this is the new Outlook app. How many people have used Acompli in the past? All right, so this is the Acompli app that we purchased, and we rewrote it as Outlook, or rebranded it. And the team has been very hard at work trying to make sure that this is an enterprise managed app. So I come in here, I say add an account, it's an Office 365 one. I give it my credentials. And I have a somewhat simpler password than Brian did, so I can type it faster. All right, I hit sign in, and ta-da! There you go. So this is about 2 months worth of work from the Acompli team to say, hey, the Outlook app now shows you the enrollment prompt if you're under conditional access. That's brand new, and that's coming out at the hopefully by the end of June. They're actually doing beta testing this week. So that's brand new stuff. Okay. Right, so it's Outlook. And native email clients, as Brian said, we support any EAS client, and that's across iOS, Android, and Windows. Now you'll notice the right-hand side, the Windows Phone side, looks like a lot of no's, not a lot of yeses. That hurts me. We just don't have the apps that do that. Windows 10, however, has a bunch of MDM capability in it, so we will be supporting the universal apps on Windows 10 using MDM for Office 365. So that's when all the conditional access support will come in for Windows as well, and it'll use the same capabilities. Okay, last piece, manage. See, I don't even have a slide. I'm just going to go straight to a demo. This makes life easier. So I'm just going to switch this device and log on here. Oops. And what number am I? I am number, gotta get numbers right. Oh, 7. Okay, so back to my admin, and here's where I last was in my compliance center, setting up the policies. In order to get back to my list of managed devices, notice there's a link right here that says, show me my list of managed devices. So if I click on that, I go back to Office 365, maybe. All right, so it goes straight back to my list of devices. So I'm going to switch back and forth a little bit here, and you'll notice I have an iPad that's registered to me. And here's my iPad. See, I've got some pretty photos. I don't want to lose the photos that I've taken of the grizzly bears. So my admin better do the right thing. I have some email here. I go back. And if you look very carefully, I have 2 email accounts. So I have Outlook, which is my personal one, and I have Office 365 email, which is my corporate email. So what I'll do is I go back to here is my admin. And I have 2 options here. I can do a full wipe of the device, or I can do a selective wipe. So I'll do a selective wipe. So yes. And let's see what happens in the iPad. So I want you to focus on the number at the bottom that says mail, that currently says 6. And in a minute, hopefully, if the demo gods are with us, it'll come down, it'll talk to the Intune agent, and that number will change.
You included me in this. Don't include me in this.
Yeah, I know.
With you.
I know. It'll get there eventually. Oh, have I lost my wireless?
Oh, yeah. We've been having some issues with the... yes. So one of the guys showed me that if you get into that state, if you turn the wired Wi-Fi off real quick.
And turn it back on.
Turn it back on again. It'll auto-connect.
Maybe.
And it'll happen fast. There you go.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Still not sold on these iPads. I don't know.
All right. So what I've done is from the admin console, I sent another selective wipe down now that can actually talk to the device. We'll see if that goes down. If it doesn't go down, then we'll keep going. All right, I'll see if it's recognized it from OneDrive. I'll come back to the Outlook. Well, there we go. Look at that. It says sign-in required. All right. Really okay. And it might show me a... Oh, it's not going to show me my error message. Fine, be like that then. Try it one more time. It's not being nice to me. Well, I can't get to a OneDrive to start. All right, there you go. It vanished. So you can only see my personal email. My work email just disappeared in front of your eyes. Number really did go down to 5. Now if I go to OneDrive, it should show me I'll show you the screen it shows me because we did this earlier. So there you go. I actually took a screenshot of my test that I did this morning, and that's what it normally shows you, is it tells me that I did an app wipe. And my pictures of my bears, oh, there we go. Oh no, what am I doing? Looking at the screen. And my pictures of the bears are still there. So all of my personal information is still on my iPad. All of my corporate information has gone. All right. So I will switch to one last thing, because the other thing you can do from a an Office 365 point of view is have a look at the reporting. Now, I will tell you this is a little bit of an early version of the reports. The reporting will be finished soon, but I will show you an early version of it. That should be ready, so I can click on See Device Compliance Reports. And we'll see if my test tenant will connect. Oh, here we go. Just thinking about it. There we go. Look. So in my very active environment where I have a whole 3 devices connected, I might get information like, hey, these are the devices that are connected, these are the ones that are compliant, these are the ones that are violated, and you can see the table at the bottom, the last time they synced, the first time they were synced, and we'll also put some wipe information in there as well. So you can get a sense for what types of devices are connecting, when was the last time they connected, all of that sort of great reporting type information. Okay, so that's from the admin experience. All right, how does it work? We promised a pretty diagram. We have a pretty diagram. So, Office 365, Azure Active Directory in the middle, and Windows Intune. So it starts with the IT admin. The IT admin configures a policy, and you saw me do that in the Compliance Center. Those policies then get distributed to Azure Active Directory into Intune. Azure Active Directory needs to know which users need to be compliant. Intune needs to know what policies need to be sent down to the device. So they're the things that are sent to those 2 areas. The next thing that happens is it's up to the user. So in this case, a user on a device is using a OneDrive app. They go to connect to OneDrive for Business. The app is intelligent enough to know that it needs to do its authentication to Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory, and it sends its device and user credentials, because you need both. It needs to know who the user is, and it needs to know what device they're coming from. Maybe, next one. No. There we go. Azure Active Directory says, what do I know about this device? Nothing, it turns out, because it's never connected before. So it says, fine, I don't know about you yet. Guess what? You have to enroll. So it gives the enrollment prompt. The user clicks on that enroll link. It's really a slow clicker, isn't it? And we do what we call unified device enrollment. So Brian mentioned this. We both enroll you into Intune as well as register the device with Azure Active Directory at the same time. As soon as you do that, Azure Active Directory now knows your device ID, and it sets a flag that says is managed. That's not enough, though, to give you connectivity. So Intune knows about you now, so it pushes those devices down to the policy, or down to the device. And once that device is compliant with those policies, it'll tell Intune, and the agent and the service will talk to each other. Intune then will report that device compliant state to Azure Active Directory, and the is compliant flag is set. So now my device is managed, is compliant, and I know the user is subject to conditional access. So next time I connect and send my credentials, it says, sure, I know all about you, I know you're compliant, I know the device, I know you're managed. Here, let me give you a key, and I'll let you access Office 365. Life is good. So that's how the 3 services work together to work. Now that works when the app itself has been integrated with what we call the ADEL libraries, or the Azure Active Directory libraries. For EAS, it works a little bit differently. We don't modify the app itself. We have the EAS server do the work for us. So from your EAS client, you connect to Exchange, and you automatically send the EAS ID and the username and password. Exchange then will talk to Azure Active Directory and check to see whether this particular user is subject to conditional access. If it's not, then it just goes down and does the standard EAS policies. If it is, however, it will send that quarantine mail that you saw. And this is different to the EAS quarantine mail. This is a particular one that you saw in Brian's demo, where it says, hey, you need to enroll the device. So the user clicks on that enrollment link, and it does that same unified enrollment that we just saw. And then the additional step is needed. Oh, hang on. And then Intune can set the device compliance status. But the additional step is needed to send the EAS ID to Azure Active Directory. Then the EAS ID is populated, and then mail flows. So that's the quick version of how it all hangs together. Now, if you already have EAS policies, it's really easy. MDM policies override them, but only for the users that have MDM policies applied to them. For everybody else, EAS works just fine. We don't remove the EAS policies from the device, we simply override them. So if the user is no longer If they're no longer in the MDM policy, so you take that group out, the EAS policies will reassert themselves. All right, so it's very easy to start with EAS and migrate over in groups of users, or if you've never used EAS, then it doesn't matter. You can just start using MDM. All right, the eye chart of what's different between EAS, Office 365 for MDM, and Intune. So the main difference between EAS and MDM for Office 365, MDM for Office 365 provides reporting on the devices that connect. They are group-based policies, so you can set different policies for different groups of users. We do the jailbreak detection. We do selective wipe. And the main part of it is we prevent that access to email and to SharePoint, so it's across the Office 365 services from the apps themselves. So much more granular control than you would have got in EAS. I'll turn it over to Brian to finish up to talk about what full Intune gives you.
All right. Well, we're getting a little short on time, so I want us to have an opportunity at the end to talk and have Q&A, so I'm going to move fairly quickly through this. We've touched on some of the major differences, but when I just think about the major difference between Office 365 MDM and EMS and Intune, it's essentially the ability to provision, deploy, configure apps, and do essentially MAM. So the things that you've probably seen at the keynote, preventing data from moving outside of managed applications, getting those applications deployed, that's the big thing that's different. Through this. Some additional things other than the MAM. So Intune, if you have the full subscription, can enable you to deploy certificates and Wi-Fi and VPN profiles. There's some additional features for enterprise as far as being able to bulk enroll devices and set policies and things at a large scale. The company portal then is used as kind of a self-service application portal for your end users, so that if they're going to get company apps, they have a place to go on their device through a native application, in this case the company portal on iOS, which we showed you, and go ahead and install those company apps, line of business apps, and so that makes those apps available in the company portal. Obviously, without app management within O365 MDM, the company portal is really only used for enrollment, for looking at your devices, checking compliance, and there's some information there about how end users can contact IT, and those are the main differences on the end user side. And then Intune has PC management capabilities, Windows 7, Windows 8.1. There's an actual PC agent that runs and does some more advanced things like software update management, endpoint protection, some more advanced Win32 app deployment, things of that nature that are available through Intune and the PC management side of the service. So I'm actually going to skip this and test the demo gods one more time and get on an iPad. I don't know why I'm subjecting myself to this, or subjecting you to this. So I'm going to build this out real quick and just talk through it using a live demo. Let's do 8. Yeah. So I'll show this. So when I've deployed applications through Intune and have applied application policies, essentially what happens is I can go in here, let's say I'm in Outlook. In this case, you can apply an additional PIN setting. You can do save as settings. You can prevent cut, copy, paste from unmanaged apps. This is a fictitious executive at Microsoft, Brad Anderson. Happens to be my corporate vice president. So I think in the keynote we showed the copy paste, but I'll show like opening an attachment, which is a little bit different. Let's open an attachment. You can do it. Load it. Okay, so here's the kind of the Outlook preview, and then I can decide where I want to open this document to. Because Word is a managed app, it's going to ask me for a PIN. You can set the timeout for this, or you can not have a PIN. It's totally up to you and your company policies. And so I'm going to open that document, and from there, I'll grab some information. Oh, there's a earnings info, and I'm going to select, not all. See, this shows my prowess with the iPad. I'm just going to select maybe a little bit of information there, copy that. If I come out then, and if I go to Twitter, you've already seen the Twitter thing if you watch the keynote, but let's say the native notes program, obviously I'm not going to be able to paste that sensitive company data. But if I say, let's say I go to Excel, and I kind of go in here and click on that, I can paste, not sure why I would paste all that text, but you can see Excel is managed by the company. It has restrictions applied, and I can also do some things like go back into mail, and I can go ahead and create a new corporate mail. This is using my corporate account. I can paste that information there. Now here's an interesting thing that you probably didn't see before, that you can change the from if you have multiple accounts within Outlook. So if I attempt now, I've actually started authoring a company email. If I attempt to switch, it will tell me that I can't actually switch to my personal mail because I've already started creating a document with company data. So that's essentially what that looks like, and some of the capabilities that you would get if you were to upgrade to a full Intune or full EMS subscription from the Office 365 MDM.
Excellent.
Awesome.
One slide to wrap up.
We're almost done.
Almost done.
So
All
patient.
right.
We love you.
MDM for Office 365 provides the basic conditional access, device management, select reporting, and it's included in practically all of the Office 365 SKUs. It does replace EAS policies if you're already using them for those users. But Microsoft Intune provides all of that, so it provides the same conditional access capabilities, but it also provides the kind of additional mobile device controls. You can put out Wi-Fi and VPN profiles, those sort of things. You can do the full application management. You can do the application restrictions, which is restricting cut, copy, paste, save as, those sort of things between managed and unmanaged apps. And you can do all the PC management as well. So, 3 quick questions that we know we get all the time.
All right, so when can I get MDM for Office 365?
All right, we've already talked about this briefly. So Office 365 first release customers have it today. We will be rolling it out in production slowly over the next few weeks, but if you want it now, turn on first release and it's all yours. The question I get a lot, Brian, is can I use Office 365 MDM and Intune at the same time?
Why did I get the tough question? Okay, so right now you kind of have to choose which MDM approach you're going to take. We are working right now actively, and in fact I've been getting status emails on our testing and evaluation on a way that you can either easily switch from Office 365 MDM to Intune, or to kind of segment out your environment where you would have Office 365 MDM for a portion of your users, but then for maybe some of the users that deal with more sensitive company data, you would get them EMS subscriptions. You won't be able to do that with the first GA that you see, but it will be coming soon. We're working very hard at it.
Okay.
And what if I already have an MDM provider?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, so if you've already got an AirWatch or a mobile line, the reality is that a device can only have one MDM provider installed on it. So if you want to turn on MDM policies for those users, they would have to unenroll the devices from AirWatch or mobile line and re-enroll them in Intune. And the reason for that is when you go to do the conditional access check for that user, it will never say that they're compliant until an Intune agent tells the Intune service that that device is compliant. So right now you would have to unenroll those users and re-enroll them for MDM for Office 365 to work. And that is it. And we have all of 2 minutes, but if anyone has any additional questions, we have microphones in the room.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks. Have a great rest of the conference. Enjoy your time in Chicago. We'll take questions now.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to come up, you can.
Yeah, come on up.
Come on up, ask questions. Thank you.